By the middle of the 19th century, the British East India Company appeared powerful, confident, and firmly in control. It ruled vast territories, collected enormous taxes, and commanded one of the largest armies in the world. From the outside, the system looked stable, but beneath that surface, pressure had been building for decades. What finally erupted in 1857 was not a sudden accident. It was the result of years of resentment, misunderstanding, and quiet anger that Britain failed to see coming. The company had transformed India from a collection of kingdoms into a tightly controlled economic machine. Land revenue systems were harsh. Traditional rulers were sidelined or removed. Local industries declined under British trade policies. Farmers were pushed toward cash crops. Communities that once governed themselves were now governed by distant administrators who often neither understood nor respected local customs. At the center of this system stood the company's army. Indian soldiers, known as sepoys, formed its backbone. They were disciplined, skilled, and loyal for many years. But loyalty has limits. These soldiers served a foreign power, followed foreign officers, and increasingly felt that their traditions, beliefs, and dignity were being ignored. Religious and cultural tensions grew steadily. British officials, convinced of their own superiority, often interfered in social practices without understanding the consequences. Long-standing customs were dismissed as backward. Missionary activity increased. Laws were introduced that disrupted traditional inheritance, marriage, and land ownership. Each decision may have seemed minor in isolation, but together they created deep unease. The final spark came in the form of a rifle cartridge. In 1857, sepoys were issued new cartridges for the Enfield rifle. To use them, soldiers had to bite the cartridge open before loading it. A rumor spread quickly through the ranks that these cartridges were greased with animal fat made from cows and pigs. For Hindu soldiers, the cow was sacred. For Muslim soldiers, the pig was forbidden. Whether the rumor was entirely true mattered less than the fact that it was believable. To the sepoys, this was not just a technical issue. It felt like a deliberate insult, a sign that the company either did not care about their beliefs or was actively trying to undermine them. When soldiers raised concerns, they were dismissed or punished. That response turned suspicion into certainty. In March 1857, resistance began. Indian soldiers refused to use the cartridges. Punishments followed. Public humiliation followed. Then discipline collapsed. By May, open rebellion had begun. Soldiers in Meerut rose up against their British officers. They marched to Delhi and declared the aging Mughal emperor as their symbolic leader. The uprising spread rapidly across northern and central India. Military mutiny blended with civilian revolt. Farmers, dispossessed rulers, and local leaders joined the resistance, each with their own grievances against company rule. For the British, the shock was immense. This was not a small disturbance. It was a widespread challenge to authority. Entire regiments turned against their commanders. Key cities fell into rebel hands. Communication lines were cut. The company's confidence vanished almost overnight. The response was swift and brutal. British forces regrouped and launched a massive counteroffensive. Reinforcements arrived from Britain and other colonies. The rebellion was crushed city by city, village by village. Punishments were severe. Executions were public. Entire communities were destroyed as warnings to others. The goal was not only to defeat the rebellion, but to ensure that nothing like it could ever happen again. By 1858, the uprising was over. The company had survived, but its reputation had not. The scale of violence, the breakdown of control, and the sheer cost of suppressing the rebellion forced Britain to confront a reality it could no longer ignore. The British East India Company was no longer fit to rule. For over a century, Britain had allowed a private corporation to govern millions in its name. The rebellion exposed the danger of that arrangement. A company driven by profit had neither the legitimacy nor the moral authority to rule an entire society. The illusion of stability was gone. In Britain, Parliament acted decisively. The East India Company was stripped of its governing powers. Its armies, territories, and administration were transferred directly to the British Crown. India would no longer be ruled by a company. It would now be ruled by an empire. The rebellion of 1857 marked a turning point in history. For Indians, it became a symbol of resistance and sacrifice. For Britain, it was a warning. Power without understanding leads to collapse. Control without respect invites rebellion. Although the uprising failed militarily, it changed everything that followed. British rule became more centralized, more cautious, and more openly imperial. Policies were adjusted. Apologies were offered in words, even as control tightened in practice. The age of company rule had ended, but the age of empire had entered a new and more direct phase. The events of 1857 showed that the British Empire was not invincible. It could be challenged, it could be shaken, and it could be forced to change. In the next chapter, Britain will formally take control of India. The crown will step forward. Queen Victoria will be proclaimed Empress, and the empire will attempt to rule more carefully, even as it deepens its grip. But the memory of rebellion will never fade. From this moment onward, British rule in India will always carry fear beneath its authority and resistance beneath its silence.